Welcome to Running Your Stories, episode 11. So this time we're going to do a roll right through from the introduction right into the show, because we're doing a catch up with my own story this time. And so Wayne, who's usually hiding behind the camera and off in the background, is in front of the camera. How are you enjoying that, Wayne?
Oh, it's not as comfortable as sitting behind the camera, that's for sure, but I'm sure I'll get used to it.
Yeah.
So I believe you're wanting to bring us a little bit up to date with what you've been doing the past few months, and more importantly, a little trip around the Hardmoors 60.
Yes, that's right. Thanks, Wayne. And one other thing just to highlight before we sort of properly get going is we are talking to a couple of people about sponsorship for the show, because we have had a few technical difficulties with equipment. It would be nice to have a little bit of money available to be able to cover this kind of thing when we need it. And this is the slot where we'd be mentioning sponsors, thanking sponsors, and again at the end. And you know, we'll only ask people whose companies we respect, and so yeah, this is the slot for sponsors, as it were. So
basically, if anyone wants to sponsor what we're doing, how do they get in touch with us now?
runningyourstories@gmail.com is the best way, and we'll respond from there. And yeah, we'll talk details.
Excellent. So what's been going on there?
So what's been going on? Well, last time when we started the show, in fact episode 1, we talked about how I'd got into running, and I'd ended up doing the Spine Challenger event in January, and I was broken in absolute pieces. And that, you know, I was so inspired by this idea of covering what was 114 miles on foot in the middle of winter, that I pushed myself to do it as soon as possible. And in a lot of ways I wasn't ready, but I got to the end and I was still alive, hadn't put anybody else in danger. So, you know, in other ways I was ready, and it was definitely inspirational.
I imagine you learnt quite a few lessons from that short little triple on the Pennine Way.
Well, there were lessons that kind of came to mind, and yeah, so slight interruption. Hopefully we can edit in to start from a decent place again. So yeah, I was just describing the fact that did the spine, really kind of broken, and as you said, Wayne,
a few good lessons along the way.
Well, yeah, and this, one of the things I was very conscious of is it's very easy to say you've learned a lesson, but I always feel that until you go out and actually put it into practice, it's only a thing in your head, and you haven't necessarily learned it, you haven't necessarily changed yourself or anything else.
No, it's kind of, you've understood that it's happened, but actually acting on it and doing something about it so it doesn't happen again is a totally different story. Something we do see quite a lot with ultra runners, really.
Yeah, exactly. So then you know, we had Fiona on talking about the Oldham Way Ultra, where I did put into practice some of the lessons that I'd learnt, particularly about pacing it, not going off too fast, controlling it, and ended up with a fantastic result in that race. And then, you know, did a few other things through the year, and my aim has always been to get back to being ready to do the Spine Challenger again next January. And so I kind of planned out that I would build up the distances over the year, look at my training, look at what help I needed, and try and get ready for it. And it's at this point now, having run a 63.5 miles it was, where I think I've learnt enough and put it into practice that it's worth sharing.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're kind of doing here. So after the Oldham Way Ultra, which was a surprise and joint second place, I went off and did the Lakeland 3-day event, which was a great event, which was sort of 58 miles, 28 Lakeland summits over 3 days. It's something that I would definitely recommend to people, doing that type of event as a way of getting that experience, because at that point in time, if I tried to go and run 58 miles on the lakes in one go, it was about 7,500 metres of ascent.
Was it an ultra day, that? Was it a stage race with shorter distances over 3 days?
It was about 22 miles a day for the first 2 days, and then whatever it was left, 13 or so on the third day. So yeah, it wasn't an ultra a day. It was,
but tough enough.
It was definitely tough. Yeah, like I say, over 7,000 meters of ascent, which is a good amount. So that was good. With it being broken down over the few days, you've got a chance to recover. You've got a chance to sort of see how much your body wants to feed. I remember eating 3 dinners on the Sunday night, and then I was good to go again on Monday.
We're all capable of that. It's whether we can do anything the day after. That's the problem.
But yeah, so that was good. And then I had a lovely kind of cross training trip out to the Alps, and that's really hiking up Mont Blanc, up to the summit of Mont Blanc at 4,810 meters above sea level, which was fantastic. And so you know, I definitely would say that I don't follow, you know, an absolute traditional kind of training plan, but not quite as let's say, I don't know what exactly, see if you can find a better phrase than me, but because to describe Carl Howells, who we had on the last podcast, as being gung-ho wouldn't be quite right, because he's
not if he's listening to this.
He won't be listening today, because right now he's running Spartathlon.
He is, yeah.
But he has this philosophy of do what makes you happy, run whatever makes you happy. I find I need to kind of look for a little bit more discipline than that, otherwise I don't feel I'll quite prepare myself.
From my experience with you need a more structured approach to what you're actually doing, rather than just what will be.
Definitely follow Carl's philosophy of I can't live by a training program. Yeah. I've got a full-time job, I've got 3 kids, I volunteer for mountain rescue. I can't live by a training program. I've got to be flexible. I do overseas business trips. In fact, that was another test I gave myself. I did a week in America, then a week in Malaysia on business. I ran a 30k, I think, myself in the middle of that on the Saturday while I was back here, and then at the end of that, having arrived back on a Sunday I went and did the Huddersfield Marathon. Yes. Which is not the easiest of marathons. No,
slightly hilly in places, but
and I lay down on the grass and rested for a while when I finished. But it was kind of a good test of where my body was at that point. I wasn't fast. I knew I couldn't be fast, having just put my body through 2 intercontinental trips. But then getting in towards the Hardmoors 60, I specifically planned a more traditional training block of I built up to I think I did back-to-back a 90-kilometre week and an 80-kilometre week, and then started tapering down from that. I think that was my peak training, which is, I think previous to that I had once done an 80-kilometre week, but that had involved a really long walk as part of my spine training. So that wasn't 80k of running, whereas this time it was 90k of running and 80k of running.
Rather than just being time on your feet.
Just time on my feet. It was actually running, and that included a 50k training run.
Right.
So I ended up with only 1 day free and available to actually go and recce the route. So I decided that I would go and recce the end of the route, because that's where I would be tired and probably in the dark. In fact, definitely in the dark, which I was. And so that I would definitely say was a good decision. And we'll come on to some things that happened there that proved to be a very good decision. That if you're restricted on your time for recceing, go and recce the end. I definitely say that.
Yeah, it's a time when you're tired, you're not thinking as straight, and if you've got that locked away in your head from previous recces, it's an easy run for you, really.
Exactly, because also at the start you've got 200 people to follow.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And at the end you haven't. You might end up completely on your own. So definitely recceing the last part of the route is a good plan. The other things I've been experimenting with through the training runs is nutrition, because as I've become more experienced, you run with people, you look at what they're eating and drinking, and I'd listen to pretty much every episode of the Training for Ultra podcast, which is somebody probably a year ahead of me in his running. He's a guy in America, and it's a great podcast. It's just all a little bit American, although he has just run CCC in Chamonix, which was very interesting to listen about. Sounds like a heck of a race. That's the 100k.
Yeah, I have a few people that are going out and doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough race, and he did better than he expected at that. Right. He's now committed himself to doing the Moab 240. But so, like I say, I'd say he's about a year ahead of me in running terms. But actually, similar kind of journeys that were middle of the pack kind of runners, and our aim is to run as far as we can, not necessarily being overly concerned about speed. But the faster you go, the sooner you get to the finish, the sooner you can start resting. So you don't want to go too slow. You want to be efficient. But it's about building the distance. So from all these things, I'd heard more and more about liquid nutrition, going easier on your stomach. One of the things I have really started practicing is the time of my last sort of big meal before a race. I used to try and get it like 1 hour before, so it was, my stomach wasn't sort of, things weren't flying around in there, but I felt I had the food to kind of pay me back later on. And I'd tried different types of food just before the start of the race. And actually I did the Wharfdale 3 Peaks, which is another kind of nice event more than a race, because it's also set up for walkers. And on that I tried eating quite a bit of fruit just before the race, and that race starts straight up a hill.
Right, so you're straight into it. And
by the time I hit the second hill, I couldn't go fast uphill anymore. By the time I hit the third hill, I was crawling along. Downhill, I managed to finish reasonably well, but I was slower than I should have been, and I think it's because I got my nutrition still not quite right. So
you feel you were slower, just lack of energy rather than ability.
Yeah, and because it's the theory goes that if your stomach's busy, it can pull 20 or 30% of your blood into there to process the food. Now on an ultra, when you're getting above 50k, certainly you're going to have to eat at some point. You've got to take some calories on board, otherwise you're going to completely crash before the end. So I started trying out Tailwind to take it on as pure liquid nutrition. Had pretty much only Tailwind on my 50k training run, and it was a hot day, which also makes it harder to eat. And I just wasn't hungry. I still felt good at the end. It worked really well for me. Tried it on a few other training runs and sort of smaller races, and it was feeling really good. So I went into the Hardmoors 60 with my nutrition plan of plenty of Tailwind available. Also sort of snack bars kind of thing, which I know is a good fallback. Then there's also the food that was on the checkpoints. Quite reasonable sort of checkpoints. I wasn't planning on relying on it, so I didn't pay massively close attention. I had some nice pieces of melon. In particular, I really like that kind of thing on checkpoints. And then it's a supported race, and my lovely wife came along to support me, so I also knew that I could ask for pretty much anything and get it at the next road crossing if I needed it. So it was quite a secure nutrition plan going into the race. So that was the plan, and I'd moved my meals before the race to now be in 2 to 3 hours before the race.
So that's on the morning of the race.
Of the morning of the race, 2 to 3
hours before.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So definitely nothing closer than 2 hours before the start of the race. I
mean, that must mean you've got an incredibly early start for a race now, then.
Well, yeah, and so that's kind of where the compromise comes in. That this was an 8 a.m. start, so I got up at 5:45, so I could eat at 6. I decided to go and stay in a hotel close to the start, so that I didn't have to get up earlier. Otherwise, it would have been a much earlier start than that, which then really does impact your sleep. Not that I really slept very much the night before, as is normal. I tried to, again, listening to other things, a good sort of recommendation that I've heard is try and get, if your race is on a Saturday morning, try and get a really good sleep on the Thursday night, because you know Friday night's going to be a mess.
Bad idea,
and I failed at that as well. So I was going into, I had a really good taper into it, so in that sense my legs were rested, but I didn't get as much sleep as I would have liked on the Thursday and Friday nights. But in the end, I don't think that really affected me too much, because I wasn't exhausted from overtraining or anything. Really good, properly controlled taper into the race. So came along to Saturday morning. Like most races, the race starts is in one place and the parking's in a slightly different place, and you're never quite sure how that's going to work out. But when I was staying in a hotel where it was like a 10-15 minute drive to the race start, it takes a bit of pressure off.
It's a lot less hassle in the morning.
Although I did find, sort of got into the car park, and I think the charges in the car park started at 8 o'clock, and that really messed with my head. That okay, I'm running at 8 o'clock, but Val's going to be back at the car at what, 10 past 8, quarter past 8, 20 past 8. Should we put a ticket on the car? Should we not? It's probably going to be okay. And because there's so much going through your head before the race, that really just messed with my head. And in the end, I had to say to Val, "Can you just sort it out? Can I just leave it with you? You make the decision. I just can't work it out because there's just so much going on."
Such a simple task.
Something so simple, and it just to have that mess with me like that. It was I was kind of amused by it that was messing with me, because one of the big aims that I gave myself for this race was that I thought I'm really prepared for this. I hoped I was really prepared for it, and I wanted to stay in a positive frame of mind. Whatever problems came up, try and treat them as problems that come up in races that you need to solve it, because that's part of being an ultra runner. And so that was the second problem, because I got up there Friday night and realised that my soft flasks to go in my hydration vest were in my freezer at home.
Excellent.
Because I'd properly cleaned them and washed them out, and thought, well, I don't want them going manky before the race. Put them in the freezer, looks after them, kills bacteria. And so I got up there Friday night, found I didn't have them. So there was only one shop within 30 minutes drive that was going to have a chance of having any, so I went and bought some that didn't fit properly and all the rest of it. So but that
minor things, but if you can deal with them as they're coming along.
That one I dealt with very well. The car park not so well. Went round to race start and almost fell for the joke of the sign being up saying fun run registration, and thinking, I must have to go somewhere else, and hold on a minute. But very well organised registration on the Hardmoors. Up to that desk, you're all sorted. It's usual. It's a crowded room, very hot inside. One thing that I had done, after the spine race, I ended up doing a lot of physio work, spending a lot of time with the physio. And I know some people don't bother with warm-ups and some people do. And I decided, look, part of this is I want to be running at the end. I want my legs in good shape afterwards, so I want to do a proper warm-up. And with Val being there at the start and being 2 minutes from the car, I took my yoga mat along. I had the yoga mat down in the car park, and I'll put pictures of that out when I do my blog about this. I was there in the car park on my yoga mat doing the warm-up exercises that the physios showed me, which I need to share with Pro Sport Physio. So the lessons they taught me, because they might be interested in sponsoring, so let's mention that. Absolutely. I think sometimes with things like that, it can physically help you. People can debate it. What works for one person, does it work for another? But what it certainly does do is you go along to registration. Well, I was there about 7:10 in the morning. The race is going to start at 8. That's a lot of time to stand around and let things go through your mind and get potentially in the wrong frame of mind. So if you can spend 20 or 30 minutes thinking, I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing this is setting me up, it just again
it's
helps.
More positive.
It helps you, to put you in that really sort of positive frame of mind. So I wanted the positive frame of mind. I wanted to be running at the finish, because I certainly wasn't on the spine, and I wanted to be in good shape after I finished, and that involves pacing it at a sensible pace. So I probably took that a little bit too far. I was stood right at the back when the race started, and it was spent the next couple of hours slowly working through the field, but that was nice. Get to talk to a lot of people along the way. Again, I wasn't getting wound up at all if I had to wait for people. There's a few stiles in the fairly narrow track going up a hill near the start, and I just took it that every time I had to wait behind somebody, that this is just saving energy for later. It's energy in the bank. 2-3 minutes on an ultra is just nothing. You're going to finish hours apart from other people, and if you waste 30 seconds or a minute, it's not ideal, but so what?
No, it's not worth stressing yourself out over. Just here and there. So if you turn it into a positive and see you're saving some energy, then it's a good thing for the future of it.
Yeah. So that's very positive. Found somebody to run with for a while, having a nice chat, and then one of my laces came loose. As they do. So I stopped, fastened my lace and set off again. Takes you a while. I did catch up with them again, and then not long after that, I saw Lady Rachel, who's going to be coming on and telling her story, because she's got a really interesting story to tell, who I'd met her previously on the Wharfdale Three Peaks. So we ran together for, I don't know, an hour or two. Her husband was supporting, and he's a lot more, let's say, more experienced, more confident supporter than Val is. So I'd been very clear and specific with Val, meet me in this place, that place, here's the postcodes, this is approximate timings when I'm going to be there. And something, I think, for anybody who's thinking about supporting on these kinds of races, and I'd said this to Val the night before, was, when I see you at this checkpoint, I'm probably going to see you for 2 to 3 minutes maximum. I don't want to be in a checkpoint longer than that. And what I don't want you to think for one moment that that's any kind of waste of your time. Thinking, I'm spending like an hour and then see him for 2 minutes, and then it's another hour and a half till I see him again, and what's the point in that? Because when you're running these things for 30 minutes to an hour before the checkpoint, all you're thinking about is that checkpoint. What am I going to do? Who am I going to see? And knowing that you're going to see somebody who's there supporting you lifts you for the whole hour into the checkpoint.
No. For that whole hour leading up to checkpoint, what am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? What am I going to change?
Yeah.
I don't even think about who's going to be there. It's more, what am I going to eat and what am I going to drink?
So you were just saying as you come into checkpoints, you're just thinking about what you're going to eat, what you're going to...
Yeah, and not just for that hour. For me, it's right from the moment I've started the race. It's what am I going to eat at the last checkpoint? What am I going to eat when I get home tonight? Quite often for me, that thought of food is what gets me through the whole race.
Yeah, it's... as I say, I find that if I know who's going to be, or somebody's going to be there supporting me, I can think about seeing them. And then again, after you've left the checkpoint, I'm thinking, that was really nice to see them. And it's kind of, it can give you a lift for like a full 2 hours, even though you only see the person for like 2 minutes.
It's a huge impact, that person at a checkpoint. Having supported quite a few other runners on events, it's I think something that's missed out is how hard it is supporting a runner, because they disappear off. You can fly into a checkpoint, you grab what you're going to grab, you disappear off. The supporters are then stuck with, right, we've got to get to this next place, we've actually got to get some rest, we've got to eat some food, and it's this whole list of things, and the pressure is on you as a supporter. And sometimes it's with some of the bigger stuff where I've supported people on them, I actually feel it could have been easier just to run the race rather than support the runner.
Yeah, definitely.
I do recommend everyone should try it from time to time. Like, get out there and support someone who's running, just to experience it. Especially like someone like yourself, who's an up and coming runner, who's getting better and better at it. To know what it's actually like for that support crew, I think it's really important for you and how you deal with them when you're actually at that. Because I've seen some pretty crappy runners in my time and how they treat a support crew.
Well, that's one of the things I was concerned about, because I know in other races I've got into that kind of frame of mind where you can treat either checkpoint staff or support crew, and it's treating them badly. There's no other way to say it. And it's the good ones don't take it personally. They know that's just your frame of mind at that point in time, and they sort of deal with it. But I'd rather not do that. I'd trying to not do, and that was one of my big aims. And especially when this was the first time that Val's come along and supported me in this way, it's kind of like, if I get this wrong, I'm losing my supporter.
She's never going to do it again.
Never going to do it again.
Yeah.
So I know, like, after I got through the first checkpoint, I don't think there was anything too specific at that checkpoint. I think one of the things was I came into the checkpoint and I sort of said to her, great to see you, grabbed a few things. Could you get my other hat? Because my hat was absolutely soaking with sweat, and I knew I had another hat there. She ran off, grabbed my other hat, put a fresh hat on, said, can you just rinse that one, or whatever? I don't mind it wet when I get to the next checkpoint, but I'm going to keep changing hats, and headed off. And I ran for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I thought, did I thank her properly? So I phoned her up, just put the phone on speakerphone and just thanked her properly. And just said, that was really good. That really helped me. There was no time wasted. I really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Because I couldn't remember whether I thanked her or not.
Yeah, I mean, as a support crew, you are there to support the runner, which is fair enough. But it doesn't take a second just to say thank you.
No, that's right.
Really, such a big thing just to say thank you.
Yeah. So I thought, let's get that nailed after the first checkpoint. Otherwise, she might not be at the next one.
Yeah.
And again, I had stuff organised. You can have a couple of drop bags in the race, which are literally, I just had 2 Ziploc freezer bags that were at the 2 checkpoints where they were being taken along. So actually, I would have managed okay without Val turning up. And I told her that to keep the pressure off.
But
so
then
she
you
didn't
say
need
that,
to.
but then there's the psychological side of it, knowing that she is going to be there at them points and at the finish. That could have actually made the difference between you finishing the race and actually, or even taking
without a shadow
continuing
of a doubt.
on.
Much better with her there.
Yeah,
undoubtedly.
Yeah.
But like I say, I didn't want to put the pressure on her. And again, I said, just meet me at these points where there was plenty of time for her to drive between them and make sure she was in the right place. Plenty of time for her to get her breakfast and then her lunch and things like that. Make it easy for the first one.
Yeah.
Then I can ask her to
ramp it up a little bit from there.
Yeah, I can ramp it up later. So, I mean, if specifically on one of the checkpoints, I was really just wanted a cup of tea, and I think I managed to text while I was running saying, if at all possible, if there could be a cup of tea waiting for me at the next checkpoint.
I think you should be banned from carrying a phone next time. You're becoming too reliant on this piece of technology.
But it was just so wonderful to get at that checkpoint, because I knew my thermal cup was in the car, and there's a cup of tea in my thermal cup, and she's saying, it might still be too hot, but it actually was the perfect temperature that I could just drink it down, and it was wonderful. Because
what were the weather conditions like? Speaking of temperature on the.
So, I'd specifically booked my next long race to be at the middle of September, where normally the weather's starting to turn. It's a bit cooler. You probably get a bit of rain, because I don't run well in the heat. I've been getting better. The better I get at running, I think it takes 20 or 30% off when I'm running in the heat. So, when you're starting out, 20 or 30% off it really knocks you.
Yeah.
That's the difference between finishing or not. As you get better, it's a difference in time rather than finishing. As it turned out, it was bright sunshine, 22 degrees Celsius the whole way. It was.
So it was warm.
It was warm, yeah. So hence the suddenly needing to change hats and things like that, which I hadn't really predicted. I'd set off with a long sleeve top on because it was quite cool in the morning. A lovely starting temperature, really nice, about 8 to 10 degrees Celsius when we started. Really nice with a good wicking long sleeve top on. Perfect. I should really have changed that at the first opportunity when I saw Vala. I had short sleeve tops. I had a whole range of clothes in the car just in case. It would have been better to have changed into a cooler top and then gone back to that one later on, but I just moved quickly through the checkpoints and didn't bother. That could have helped a bit. I was getting hot. And so I think it was it's kind of slightly strange on this Hardmoors 60. Some of the checkpoints, like one of them's in a village hall. You know, it's a pretty major checkpoint. You've got cooked food on, there's pizza on, and everything else. And some of the checkpoints are, you know, more just there's water and a few things you can grab there, and it's just a couple of people kind of in the middle of nowhere, you know, kind of quick through. I completely lost track.
I'm really sorry, Kevin, but the dogs have really just been a pain.
It's all right. I'm ignoring the dog and just...
You just have to excuse everyone with 2 Springer Spaniels walking around the room here now. I've decided it's playtime.
Yep.
Lay down.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah, I completely lost track of sort of numbering of checkpoints or anything else. I knew I was going through them, and I was having this conversation with other runners as well, and we're saying, like, if we missed a checkpoint somewhere, we couldn't have done. We knew we were en route. We knew we'd passed everything there was to pass, but we'd kind of lost track of numbers and whatever else of checkpoints. So about a third of the way through the race is one of the bigger checkpoints, and at that point I decided, right, I better eat some solid food here because you know, I'm going to pay for it later if I don't. I'd just been having tailwind up to that point. Felt great. Really good with energy. I'd been pacing it. I had sped up a little bit and slowed down a little bit, but just felt good. You know, I felt like I could run at the pace I want to run at. So I had some wraps prepared with egg and salad and stuff in them. Ate one of those while I was running downhill from the checkpoint. Just kind of very slow jog, fast walk kind of pace. Ate that. It tasted absolutely delicious. And then almost immediately I got that drop of energy in the legs. I just felt it straight away, and I thought, okay, you know, I know what this is. You know, the blood's going to my stomach to digest some food. Don't worry about it. There's plenty of distance to go. You know, just cruise on as best you can. Try not to. I decided not to push myself where you then, I think, sometimes get a second lower lurch of energy if you try to push yourself too hard through that. But what I did find is, as I then started going up the next uphill after that, I hope they're not eating anything important, those 2 dogs. They're eating something. As I started going uphill, I started feeling a little bit sick. And I thought, that's unusual. I've never had that kind of feeling before. But it wasn't too bad as long as I didn't try and push it too hard. I felt okay, carried on going. By the time I got the next third of the way through the race, and I guess I should describe a little bit about the scenery, because the scenery on this Hardmoors 60 is fantastic. You start off in Gisborough, and you're very quickly out of the town, run along a trail, then you go straight up a nice steep hill. Then you're onto the what's the path that we're running on here? The Cleveland Way. Sorry, I just lost it then. So you're actually onto the Cleveland Way then. So you run along top of a ridge line, drop down through a couple of towns, which, you know, as you know, racers have to go through towns following these paths. Then you get onto the coast, and you're running down with the sea on your left hand side all the time, running down the coast on the east coast, and it's just absolutely stunning scenery. You can see the sea cliffs in the distance, and you know, as you get further on, you can see Scarborough Castle and Whitby Abbey and things coming up ahead of you, and it really is a stunning place to go for a run. Very, very lucky this year because it's been such a dry summer, all the trails are just hard compacted dirt.
Right.
Some of the previous years they've been just a bog, a mud fest for 60 miles. So really runnable. The thing that people don't like about the race is there's a lot of steps. So you're running along on top of the sea cliffs, then you're dropping down to sea level, and then you're up steps again in a lot of places to get back up on the cliffs. And I was concerned about that before the race, but through my general training I've been doing a lot of hill training, a lot of hill reps, some steps up our favourite Scamenden Res.
Scamenden,
which it's like a 7k run from my house and then run up. It's 5 sets of steps, but each set of steps is 1.5, 2 stories high.
Yeah.
It's a lot of steps.
It's a lot of steps. It's really steep. It's just really steep.
So
anyone that's local to Huddersfield will know these steps, and it's worth travelling over to them just to have a
it's definitely a good training place. So I actually found the steps fine. I told myself beforehand, don't run any of the steps. There's no need to run the steps. It's a long enough race that walk the steps at a fast pace. There's no need to destroy you on the steps. There's plenty of runnable sections, particularly as you come through Scarborough. There's a long section which is actually on tarmac and on hard ground.
Is that on the seafront through Scarborough?
Yes, yeah. So you can see through seafront through Scarborough. It's completely flat because you're at sea level. You're on the seafront. So there's no point killing yourself on the steps and then walking that ground where, it's hard ground. You don't want to necessarily run too hard on it, but it's how much easier running can you get than, flat, smooth ground. Yeah, I know the dogs are running around playing. So again, that was a bit that I'd recce'd, so I knew that was coming up later on. Really enjoyable running.
No.
But by the time I got to the sort of 2/3 of the way through checkpoint,
where was that at?
That was in the village hall in a little village whose name will pop into my head at some point. A really fantastic place for a checkpoint. All the volunteers on the checkpoint absolutely just couldn't do enough to help you, as you find in a lot of races. Absolutely fantastic volunteers. Really well organised, because this is again another point where you can get your little mini drop bag, but as you come in they just look at your race number, they find it for you and bring it to you. There's no time wasted looking for it yourself or asking for it. It's there in your hand for you straight away, really fast, all well organised. But my stomach was in a mess by this time. I was feeling sick.
So up to this point had you only been using Tailwind up to this point, or you tried other foods on top of that?
I'd eaten that wrap,
right,
and I'd only been on Tailwind. I didn't feel like eating anything else at all. I'd had some melon as I came through a couple of checkpoints, some watermelon, some honey melon.
My advice for Tailwind has always been that you're supposed to just rely upon Tailwind alone and not use any other foods with it. I don't know how viable that is over a great distance.
Well, I think energy-wise I was still okay. I was still going fine.
Right.
So the Tailwind was working, but my stomach was becoming more and more of an issue. And so I ate some rice pudding in that checkpoint, which went down fine. Like I say, I just not having had the experience of being on. I was on Tailwind 5.5 hours on that training run when I did 50k, and that was fine. As I say, knowing that this was going to be over 12 hours, we didn't quite know. This is entirely new territory on the nutrition side, so went with that. And carried on with the Tailwind, and ran on, and I just kept, feeling a bit unwell, but and energy got lower as the race went on. But I think it would for me for 60 odd miles. I think if I got my nutrition perfect, I could have finished faster, but we're really talking about, I'd have to get it exactly right, and I'm just not that experienced enough yet. So yeah, the race went on. So I'd been running with Rachel a fair bit. We'd kind of separated and caught each other up at a couple of different points. She had some friends along running with her, and then there was some other people. As these kinds of races go on, it's amazing how you end up running with people that are your pace.
You bunch up though quite easily.
So there was a few people I spent quite a bit of time running with. But then as you get into the last third, you've run over 40 miles, people start dropping out. And you start meeting people who are saying, yeah, I'm just walking it into the next checkpoint. I'm done. Because I wasn't expecting to get any kind of amazing time or amazing placing on it. I knew my absolute best I thought I could achieve, because I always like to have a best case in mind, because I think if you don't have that kind of belief, you're never going to hit it. It was that if I had a perfect day, I could hit 12 hours. I thought worst case 14 hours. I didn't see why I should be over that, and I would be somewhere in between. So I was on 2/3 of the way through the race. I would have had to push to still hit the 12 hours, but it was still possible at that stage. So I was trying to push on, not lose too much time. I was passing people by that time. There was the odd one kind of coming past, but maybe one had passed me and I'd passed 3 or 4. So feels good.
Yeah.
Everyone's quite spaced out by then, both in distance and you're starting to get tired. But yeah, it was going well. And then I think it was I just kind of had in mind, once you get to Scarborough, you're only sort of 10 miles or so from the finish, and that's when you give it whatever you've got left for that last part. But that just kept seeming to be further away, because there was a diversion on the route, because part of the sea cliff has collapsed. Actually, since my recce run, I ran on that part in my recce. I must have been too heavy, and that bit of the sea cliff's given way, and so there was a diversion which had been measured by people, and it was only hundreds of meters longer, like between 200 and 400 meters longer. Very little in it, but it seemed to just go on forever. the diversion, and some people might have struggled with it, because this Hardmoors 60, it's definitely trail running, but it's not particularly technical. And again, as I started doing trail ultras, I sometimes struggled and got slowed down by technical ground. So to kind of get myself past that, I've done a few fell races, where the technicality of the ground is just way up.
Yeah.
and I drop way down in the sort of order and where I am in the pack when I start doing fell races. But it really gives you that experience that then when you hit the trails, it's kind of like, I can cope with this ground. This is normal. I can move efficiently over it. And so there was a section through some woods and part of this diversion. And the guy I was running with at that point, he was really unsure, and he was struggling a bit with the ground. He was saying, he's run the distance, really happy with the distance, but he was finding the ground really technical. And I was finding it just trail and fine, and just and that's good. That means I got my training right. I was a good plan to go and do some shorter races on more technical ground and push myself over that, doing a few fell races. So that was good. Then I got onto where I'd recce'd from, and it's such a boost when you get there. You think, I've done this. And
what distance was that then?
So when I'd recce'd, I'd actually started at the finish point, and I'd run 15.5 miles out and 15.5 miles back to get 31 miles training run. So that was, I guess, what we're talking sort of well over 40 miles. Getting into what I would call the business end of the race, where your energy's getting a bit lower, and things are getting a bit tougher. And somewhere around that point, Rachel pushed on ahead of me. She was, a very good runner, and I can't wait to share her full story, because we started talking about the podcast and saying, are you going to come on and talk about the Hardmoors 60 with me? And then she's told me a bit of her story. I said, okay, look, we'll just do a dedicated episode for you, okay, so to tell your story, and I'll come on and talk about the Hardmoors 60, so I don't steal too much of your time. Because it's a good story. It's where she's been, what she's been through, where she is now. It's good. So she was going strong, pushed on, and then there was a guy who'd passed me earlier on and sort of running along, and it's kind of getting dark by this time, and the checkpoint. In fact, I guess just coming into Scarborough. Before Scarborough, if you're feeling really strong, it's quite runnable ground. But as you start to get tired, it's kind of a little bit up and down, and a little bit this and that. And there was another lady had passed me on that ground, and I knew, as I was saying earlier, that you've got that seafront part through Scarborough. So just kind of save yourself a bit and run that. And so I passed her on that section, okay. And I said to her, when you passed me earlier, I was saving myself for this, because I know I can run this now, and that's when I know I'm getting tired, because it's probably 2 or 3 miles on this flat ground, and I couldn't run it all. Twice I had to stop and just walk a little bit. only like 20-30 seconds, catch my breath. Right, come on, this is good ground, you got to keep going here. But twice I did that. Caught up with another couple of guys there, passed them, and then it was running with somebody else, looking for, in fact I think it was one of them then started running with me. We're looking for the checkpoint, and it was just one of these things where I'd tried to mark all the checkpoints on, because I had the route on my phone on the GPS. I had a map with me as well, but I had the checkpoints marked, and for some reason I'd got that one wrong. I was just really paranoid about missing a checkpoint and having to spend loads of time going backwards to find it, because if you miss a checkpoint, you're going to get you're not going to get an official finish. So in the end I phoned Val up and said, are you at the checkpoint? Where are you? And which is all fine, because you're allowed support in this race, so there's no problem with any of this. And she said, yeah, we're just up the hill as you come out of Scarborough. Oh, right, I know where that is. So that was good. So as you come out, there's this big hill where you're getting back onto a trail at this point. It's kind of a compacted dirt road, basically, is coming up off the seafront. So hiking up there. And it was ideal point for the checkpoint, because I'd been carrying my mandatory head torch all day long, as you do, but knowing that it's a supported race, I had the mandatory head torch packed away in my race vest with the rest of the mandatory kit, but I had Val waiting with my big super bright heavy duty, I like to run with head torch. So put that head torch on, and at that point, because I knew I was going to need to use a head torch, I had the mandatory one then as a backup. Which is, I thought was actually an ideal way of doing it, because there's nothing worse than having a problem with your head torch when it's dark. So coming out from there, I'm looking at the time thinking, I'm blowing the 12-hour finish. I can't make it that far, and the guys on the checkpoint rightly said, it's about 2 hours to the finish. And I'm looking at the distance thinking, I should be able to run this in an hour. So I'm tired. I says to Val, I'll be at the finish in about an hour and a half. It was closer to the 2 hours. But that's life. Set off from there, and apparently there's one turn because you come out from there, you go along, and you end up back on a road for a very short section, and then you got to turn back onto the trails, and you can bypass a trail, and you save about 4 minutes. But it was in the race brief: do not miss this turn. You will get a 1 hour penalty if you miss this turn. But I'd recce'd it, so it's fine. And it had been sent around ahead of the race as well with a photograph of saying, this is the turn, make sure you don't miss it. And I thought, that's fine, I've recce'd that, I know where that is. And actually they had somebody there marshalling it. They hadn't promised to put somebody there because on that edge of Scarborough there's, let's say, some chavs hanging around, and apparently the volunteer there had got abuse the year before. And that's why they decided, look, let's try and really brief people and make sure people are very conscious of doing this turn without somebody marshalling it. So yeah, John had said, he's not promising a marshal there. Actually, when I got there was somebody there, which was great. Because again, he's saying the problem with putting signs out there is people will tamper with them. It's just that kind of place, unfortunately. So I thought he did a really good job, actually, of covering that. Because he didn't want to guarantee to have a marshal there. If the marshal was getting abused, he wasn't going to ask a volunteer to stay there, which is understandable. And he knew signs could get tampered with there. So ahead of time, he sent it out on email with a photograph showing exactly where it was, saying, you're going to have to navigate yourself through this junction. And then he again mentioned it in the race brief before the race. I thought, well, you can't really do more than that.
No, he's done everything.
I don't know what else you can do as a race director when you know there's that kind of person in that kind of area that's going to tamper with stuff, and they might start abusing your volunteers. And you can't ask volunteers to stay there and be abused. So I thought that was really good, actually. But yeah, when I got there was signed and a marshal, which was great. So that bit's it's another bit through some woods, and it's very up and down on stairs when you're getting tired. But I was ready for that. And then there's one more sort of part where you're getting back onto the sea cliffs, and I could see a head torch down at the side, and I'm thinking, what the heck? So I'm running along shouting down to this guy, because I'm always very conscious that I can't help but tell people I'm in mountain rescue when I'm running with them. I don't know why. I should keep it quiet, but
it's hard to keep it quiet though, isn't it?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, and again, I need to start going again. I'm often fundraising for mountain rescue. I need to tell people about this and promote it, and I'm always talking about the local teams. We're running in Scarborough and Rydale's area, and they were out fundraising that day, actually at the Scarborough Emergency Services show that day. So I kind of want to talk about it, but you also feel absolutely obliged to help anybody who's in trouble. And I can see this guy climbing up what was kind of a cliff full of brambles. And I said, "Are you okay down there?" And I shout back, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'll be okay." Right, he said he's fine. I can carry on. And he actually caught me up later on, and I was talking to him about it. And he'd taken a wrong turn at one of the points where the route brings you up, sensibly away from the cliff, and up onto the top. And he'd missed the turn, and then realised, I should be up there, and decided to go direct. Unfortunately, we found out later on that somebody else had an accident. Now, the story I heard, and I haven't had a chance to fully check this out, just being too busy, was that he may have actually fallen off the cliff. There was a broken ankle involved, and Scarborough and Rydale Mountain Rescue team involved in collecting him, and lots of race staff rushing around making sure the guy was okay. Other than the impact of landing, and he was being well looked after and connected with his family and everything else by the race staff. So it's everything that can be done was being done.
Like
Accidents will happen. I do remember running along next to one of the cliffs, and the trail's there, and the cliff's a few feet away at the side, and it's a good solid trail. There's no reason why you should trip up. And the person running with me was saying, we're quite close to the cliff. I said, well, don't fall off then. Obviously somebody else didn't listen to that advice, unfortunately. But it's a very clear trail. I didn't see any reason why anybody should, I don't think it was dangerous. But these things can certainly happen. And then got on to the last section of the route. It's it's again really well marked trail. It's flattish, just slightly uphill and slightly downhill, and it just looks exactly the same for a few miles. And it's at this point where, you know, people have got it in their mind that this is a 60 mile or 100k race, you know, so that'd be 62 mile if it's 100.
This tick over,
and they're watching this tick over and say, right, there's only a k to go. And I had a quick look at my map and said, well, no, I'd say there's 3 or 4k at a quick estimation from how far we are from where I know the finish is and where I know the route goes. So, I'm sure there's only a k to go, and it's just kind of, don't keep telling me that. You just gotta keep running, and I'm really, really tired at this point. And it's, you know, it's really runnable ground. And again, I had to just take a break, and 2 guys had been, the guy that had taken the wrong turn and climbed up the cliff, he'd been running with me then, and it turned out that we'd both set new parkrun PBs like a week before, taking 30 odd seconds off, and we're within 2 or 3 seconds of each other. And then at this point of a 60 odd mile race, we're at the same point and we're running at the same pace. And it's just amazing how that 5k thrashing yourself around time can be so similar, and then mean you're in the same place of a race like this. And he said, I really don't know this last part of the race, and it's dark and I don't know where I'm going to stick with you. And then when I had to just walk a bit, the other guy behind me went ahead, and then that guy decided he's going to go ahead with him, and they set off. And just at that point, this other lady who I'd seen earlier on came flying past. And I work in kilometres, so it might not mean much to you, but I'm talking about sub 4 minute kilometres.
Right.
Like the pace I'd run parkrun, she was absolutely flew past me, and I just, you know, wished her well, and you know, so that's fantastic. Because we were about I couldn't have been more than 3 miles from the finish when she flew past me. Probably only 2 miles from the finish, and I'll tell you about the difference in finish time when we get there, because she absolutely flew. It was phenomenal to see anybody running that fast at that stage. You know, it's the kind of pace you'd only expect to see from the elites right at the front, you know. And anyway, so we ran on from here. So I'm there now, sort of on my own in the dark at this point, thinking, well, I'm glad I know where I'm going here, because this is a bit I've recce.
Yeah.
I know exactly where I'm going, because there is a little bit as you come round. You actually come to the end of the Cleveland Way, and there's a big sort of statue bit. And at that point, there's an extra little bit of land that kind of juts out. And because I'd recce'd that and looked at it very carefully, I knew you go straight across past that statue, and then there's another route. Is it the World's Way or something that kind of continues at that point, that actually takes you into Filey. So it's another, you know, clear route. But you could think, I'm scared of missing a bit of route out and taking this extra little bit of round the end of the land, which you don't need to do. That isn't the route. So it's good having recce'd things like that, especially when you're tired. So I ran on, and then I saw the 2 guys that had just passed me. They weren't far ahead. I knew that as you run along this next bit, there's a car park on the right, and then the path is sort of off in the left corner of where there's some like short grass. And they were sort of going off to the right, and I thought, now I can take 2 places if I don't say anything here, because they're going the wrong way. And I thought, I can't do that. So I shouted over. I said, guys, you know, the route's this way. And now I had to wait till I was almost at the turning to really make sure I wasn't getting it right. I didn't want to shout them back if I was getting it wrong. So I shouted them back, and I knew they had stronger legs than me. And I thought, well, I've basically just given up 2 places here, but it's the right thing to do. But then it's downhill through some woods, and then you're along the seafront in Filey, and then up the hill to the finish. So I was giving it everything, as you would, because there's not far to go. And I was running at that point, which I was happy with. Running along the seafront, you know, I heard one of the guys catching me up, and he ran with me along the seafront. The other guy didn't actually, who was the guy that had been climbing up the up the cliff. He didn't actually catch me up, which I'll explain why I was too smashed at the end to talk to people properly in a minute. But so I came out of there and going up the hill to the finish, and I said to him, you know, I can't run here. I'm just going to go as fast as walk as I can up this hill. You know, good luck to you. Off you go. And to be fair to him, like I say, I directed him round. He finished 1 second behind me.
Wow.
And I got in touch with him on Facebook the next day and thanked him properly for it. He says, yeah, we were both going at a good pace. I couldn't have gone any faster, which again, it's the right thing to say. It's all very nice, but I thought it's a very ethical thing to do. You know, I know I've done it for other people in other races, and it was really, really nice feeling when, yeah, you know, you've helped somebody out that was going the wrong way, and then the just finish a second behind you rather than passing you on that last straight after you've just helped them out, which was very nice. I give them a lot of credit for that. It was really sort of great feeling. So yeah, ran into the finish line, and then it just hit me. The stomach problems, I just felt absolutely awful. Managed to say well done to Rachel, who finished third lady.
Right.
She did really
Very
well.
Good.
Absolutely brilliant. And that lady that flew past me towards the finish finished second lady, almost 25 minutes ahead of me. I don't know, I didn't think it took me that long to cover that ground.
Wow.
It was almost like she covered all that ground in zero. She absolutely flew. She passed Rachel with, must have been like 500 metres to go or something to get second lady instead of third lady. She absolutely flew.
Do we know who it was?
I can look up her name on the results. I was talking to her, and I had one kind of lucid moment when we were passing each other after the finish, and just congratulated her on that finish. It was absolutely phenomenal. The lady who actually came first lady as well, because I was there for the sort of prize giving. It was her first ultra.
Right.
And she absolutely smashed it for first lady. The guy that won it wasn't a course record, but it was a really quick time. There's two guys I think got sub 10 hours. But it was interesting when I looked at the results afterwards. There's a couple of guys sub 10 hours. There was, I think, 2 people sub 11 hours. Then 2 or 3 people sub 12, and then everybody else above that. It was kind of like really, really spread out right at the front. Really spread out.
Yeah.
So I was 12 hours 43.
That's good.
In the end, which I think for 63.5 miles, I was quite happy with that.
Do you know your overall position though?
17th.
17th, right.
And there was, I think there was about 240 started.
That's really good.
About 220 finished, I think. Something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's top 10%.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, I was happy with that. Yeah, you know, like I say, I know if I ran a perfect race, I could have been faster. I wouldn't have moved up that many places, but yeah, that was really sort of happy with that. But yeah, Val was then great looking after me at the finish. I just had to say, I've just got to find somewhere to sit down. I'm just smashed. I couldn't talk to people properly. She brought me a selection of food and drinks. I had a cup of tea. I love tea. I had a cold drink as well, some juice, and I was trying to eat and drink whatever I could, knowing that my body needs it. And then I just felt really, really sick. I went off the toilets and I didn't actually throw up, and then I came back and thought I'd settled down, but I couldn't eat or drink anything else. Felt really, really bad. And actually they had showers in the centre, so I said, well, I'll go and have a shower, and then we'll head off home. So I went and had a shower, and I threw up in the shower. It just suddenly came over, and I felt really ill. Threw up. I felt a lot better then, cleaned it up the best I could, went to apologise to the staff and said, I think I've cleaned it up well enough, but I just want to mention it because I don't want, you know, the race getting a bad name for leaving a mess somewhere and all the rest of it. But when I got home, because it was then sort of midnight when I got home, tried to eat and drink knowing that I need this for recovery. And I just had this massive reaction in my mouth, like pain like I've never felt before. And I just didn't know what it was. I could drink milk and that was it. So I went to bed, could only having drunk milk. Didn't throw up anymore, but got up in the morning, felt a bit better. I tried to have some, thinking, well, milk works. So I had some very, very milky cereal. That went down okay, not too much of it. And I thought, okay, I'll try some cheese on toast. I got halfway through it and my mouth again erupted, burning, like horrible reaction. And basically over the next day, it developed into a massive ulcer on the roof of my mouth.
Oh, right.
And it was incredibly painful. And the strange thing was that it was reacting to anything I ate with wheat in it would make this ulcer react. And it's kind of like, I wanted to put carbs back into my body.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
you know, whole grain wheat stuff is
yeah.
what I go for. So I was actually fine eating potatoes and other carbs and rice, fine. But again, even by that evening, just having some pasta, you know, sort of family dinner kind of stuff. And I had to stop eating the pasta and just eat the rest of it without the pasta because it started burning again. Really weird reaction. And then I've heard since then there's been a virus going around and people have had this kind of ulcer on their tongues. This is like locally. It's a really nasty virus. So it looks like I'd actually run the race with this virus attacking my body.
Right. Yeah.
and it just, at the end of the race, it just got me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not totally sure whether my nutrition was slightly wrong and that was where the nausea came from, or whether it was this virus. But certainly this ulcer, again, because I was using these soft flasks that I wasn't familiar with, I had to suck a lot harder on them. And again, I wasn't sure whether that damaged the roof of my mouth, sucking harder on these flasks all day.
Yeah, potentially.
We're Ron Hill ones, which I've never used before, and I'm used to using the Camelback ones. The Camelback ones are really good. I've been really, I mean, the only thing about them is you've got to screw the lid on just right, otherwise they leak a bit. Now I've just stuck PTFE tape around them and then they seal fine. But they sit really nicely on my body. The suction on them works really well for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lot of personal preferences. The Ron Hill ones, they're kind of squarish at the bottom, which meant they were digging into me rather than being tapered at the bottom. And I had to suck really much harder to get the liquid out of them.
But they're still soft flasks.
Still soft flasks, yeah. So I wasn't sure whether sucking on those flasks all day long had actually started to damage my mouth, and maybe that gave a weakness for this thing to get a hold of. But it was really painful. So I didn't eat for more than 12 hours after the race. And I actually felt okay. I then, my legs were completely fine. I could have gone running the next day. I did some walking, some active recovery. I was very conscious that my body would be in a weakened state, having not taken food on board after the race. That I should be very careful not to cause myself some damage. The big problem I did have, other than this massive ulcer in my mouth, which was really an issue, was my toes were completely mashed. Now, when I'd done the spine, my toes got mashed when my feet swelled up, and the tops of my feet got really sore, and that was using La Sportiva Raptors, which otherwise are really good shoes, but I find my foot changes shape so much when it starts to swell that they then don't suit my feet. When my feet aren't swollen, I love them. Yeah. But as my feet get swollen, they just don't have the give in the right places for me. So I'd gone on to using Scott, the blue ones. I forgot what they're called. They got a strange name. I don't understand why they all have to have such strange names. So I can never remember the names of them. And when I'd only got them fairly soon before the Oldham Way Ultra, and I'd got a big blister on my big toe. So then I'd started wearing Injinji toe socks with them.
Right.
And even like the Lakes 3-day thing I did, I wore them for 3 days, 50 odd miles, and my feet were fine. Training runs, feet were fine. Ran 60 odd miles. I've got 3 black toenails, 2 toes with blisters underneath the toenails, massive blister on my big toe again. That's with the Injinji socks on, my toes were just mashed. So I've started looking for the next option on shoes. Unfortunately, I really, they're so comfortable, those shoes. I really like them, but when I do the long races, my feet swell up, and toes got mashed again, which is so. I've just started testing out a pair of Ultras, which are the ones that are the really wide toe box, shaped completely different, but they have 0 drop on them, which I've done 2 runs in them so far. I feel all right after the second run, so that's a work in progress.
Know how that goes on. That.
Yeah. So you got to keep trying things out. So I can now start to say I've learned some lessons from the spine, which is where we started from. I paced the race well enough. I went a little bit fast in kind of once I settled into the race. I started off nice and slow, then I went a little bit fast just because I was feeling good. I should have held my pace a little bit more at that section, but I finished it running in a good time, so I'm happy with that. And afterwards, like I say, my legs have been completely fine. I managed to put it off until the Friday after the race, so I had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday without running, and then I went for a short run on the Friday because I was on a mountain rescue training course. Went running with a mutual friend of ours, Emily, that night. Just a 3.5k, I think it was, on a nice soft flat trail because we were in the York area. But that was nice. And then I ran for the next 7 days in a row because I was just fine. My legs are fine. Just sore toes. So that's good. What I would say is that my training plan was obviously good because I've built up, and so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, because I really like sharing other people's stories. But lots of people are asking me because they can see the way I've only been running regularly for 2 years and 2 months, and I've had a very successful 60-odd mile race. So, with the training plan, I was roughly working to a training plan from Relentless Forward Progress, that book, which is a guide to running ultra marathons. That's a really good book because I couldn't see it on your shelf. It's because it describes how the training plan is built and why it's built that way. So it helps you to know how to flex it to suit yourself, which I've really liked about it. I was actually running slightly in between the 50 mile a week plan and the 70 mile a week plan because my peak was 50 odd miles a week. So I was I was never actually exactly on a plan, but it's a guide. It's a guide
more than anything. It just keeps you going in the right direction.
And
so that's
and again, I was thinking about it carefully, knowing that people are asking me about these things, that the tiredness and the feeling in my legs that I got later in the race is best simulated in training with the back-to-back long runs.
Yes, yeah.
More so than the single longest run when I did the 50k. I actually just felt fine when I did that. When I've done back-to-back, doing, like say a 26 mile and then the next day you're doing a 10 mile or something like that. That's the way to recreate that late stage ultra tiredness feeling, because you've done a training week, normalish midweek, and then you do those back-to-back long runs. That's, I think, what it really is, what prepares you for the way you're going to feel later on in the ultra. So yeah, I definitely would share that with people, and I definitely live by and will continue to live by when you've got a big goal in mind. Because again, somebody was recently asking me that they've signed up for it's like a 200 mile race in 2020, and how can they get themselves ready for that? And I said, well, basically enter smaller things. Set yourself these goals of I want to do a my first, whether it's a 30-mile ultra or a 40-mile ultra, do that as soon as you can sensibly train and be ready to do it, and then plan a 60 and plan 100. And you probably don't want to go beyond that, but then it's more about
based on that end goal and working backwards. That's the
exactly. Yeah. But it's you work forwards as quickly as you can without hurting yourself, because if you hurt yourself, it's going to knock you back a long way. Like you say, and then also you work backwards from the goal to think, well, I need to be there by this point. Does that work out?
Yeah.
But I do understand having that overriding long-term goal does give you a drive that you wouldn't otherwise have. So although some people can dismiss it and say, well, if you're only running this now, you shouldn't be dreaming about running 200 miles. Why not? You dream, but break the dream down into bite-sized chunks and do these other events along the way, because there's some fantastic events out there. And so for me, it was a very successful race because I stayed positive all the way through it. Like I say, I slightly fell apart after I crossed the finish line because I was quite ill. But I don't think, and I should double check this with Val, but I don't think I started being nasty or unreasonable to anybody. Still stayed kind of nice. I didn't say as many thank yous as I would have liked to have done because I was just crashing. But yeah, it was fantastic. Really enjoyable race. Really nice to have trained well enough. I'm being careful not to say trained hard enough, because it's not necessarily about training hard, it's about training intelligently. Trained well enough that I could actually go and enjoy the race.
Yeah.
And I did, specifically while I was running along on these sea cliffs with perfect sunshine and the waves splashing over there, and there's this field over here where they've just cut all the wheat, and you got all all the bales in the. It's just so picturesque in the field, running along, thinking, just remember how much you're enjoying this, and it's something people sometimes forget.
It's easy to forget,
in a race, and I just feel like I've got so many of those kinds of things right in this race. It was so enjoyable, such a good experience, and chatting with people along the way, and making new friends and stuff, and all the marshals were so good, because I specifically won't name which event it was at, but one event I've been at this year, I went through a checkpoint where they're writing down the numbers that I've gone through just for safety purposes, and there's a guy sat on a chair, shouts at me, "Turn around so I can see your number, I need to see it." And as a runner, when you're pushing yourself, that is very frustrating. And on this race, there was none of that. They specifically had people stood at different positions so they could see your number as you came in and shouting it out to each other.
That's probably more that the marshals are more experienced.
Yeah, well, that's right. They were
just,
they're really experienced. Couldn't do enough for you. Smiling marshals. I would say that race I'm talking about, it wasn't one of yours.
No, it wasn't.
But it's little things like that. They can niggle runners.
That race number thing, from our side as a race director, is such a pain in the backside. Yeah, we ask you to put it on the front. We ask you to put it on the front for a reason.
Well, that's right, and my race number was on the front.
So if you've put it on the front like we've asked you to, then it's our responsibility.
But it's just that
we can see it, not yours.
Because it was one of those races where you're likely to be putting a jacket on or off, and so you like to put it on your shorts. So it's you can see it from the front, but it's either going to be slightly right or slightly left. Yeah. And I wouldn't mind if you told at the start of the race, could everybody please put them on the left side? That's fine. I wouldn't mind that in the slightest. But you go through a checkpoint and there's somebody sat in a chair shouting at you for you being. You want you to do a 360 to have a look at it. It's like, oh, come on. Do you know how much that hurts at this point of the race?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really well organised race with great staff. The was. And again, you overhear all these things when you're at the finish. There was one of the runners had started being abusive towards one of the staff, which I was very surprised at. And John Steele, very experienced race director, first time I've been to one of his Hardmoors events, And was one of the reasons why I wanted to do a Hardmoors, was because I'd heard so many good things about them. And
I'm afraid he's not going to stop bothering us. So just come and sit down. Come on.
Look, we'll get twice as many viewers if there's dogs on the show.
Sit down. Oh, for God's sake, they're both at it now. Right,
so the people that are listening to this on a podcast, go and check it out on YouTube. You'll be able to see the dogs.
The dogs are taking part now.
But I had heard lots of good things, and I wasn't disappointed.
No, he does a very good job. He's been doing it a long time, a lot of experience behind what he's doing. And he's got an amazingly good team as well supporting what he does.
He's got a really good team. Well. Again,
he's
Shirley that works with him does a really good job there. So it was a really good experience. It worked really well booking the hotel the night before as well. I did like the fact that.
Did you drive straight back after?
Val drove back, which again worked really, because she said, do you want to stay over? Shall we just, try and get a last minute hotel stay here? I says, well, in some ways, yes. I says, but I'd really like to wake up in my own bed in the morning and see the kids, because
I've got to say personally, it's always been that stay over the night before the race, but I just want to get home afterwards. I just want to get to my own bed, and as soon as you get to your own bed, you just recover.
Yes,
it's all the difference.
So again, thanks to Val for driving home. She was tired. Like I say, it was midnight when we got home and things. It was really good to have that kind of support along.
Had she managed to get any sleep and rest during your run then?
Yeah. Like I say, I'd purposely tried to make it easy for her. She was posting pictures on Facebook of the fish and chips she was eating and the ice creams, and she'd had a nice.
I need to follow her on Facebook because I missed all this.
It worked out really well because it was a beautiful sunny day, 22 Celsius. To be honest, she could have had the kids along and had a great time. And again, with it being experienced checkpoint staff, they were really helpful to the support crews that were there. We had clear information beforehand about which checkpoints would have parking at, which ones wouldn't.
Yes.
We were told there was a couple of.
Sorry.
So I'm just trying not to lose the microphone. It's fine.
Right.
There was a couple of the checkpoints, where we were told under pain of being disqualified. No support is allowed because there's no parking. It's going to cause problems with the local villagers, and that's fine. Again, it was very clear information sent out ahead of the race, reconfirmed on the day. It was good.
They're worse than children, aren't they? Really, these two dogs. This has really gone to pot now. I've got to admit, when I went over and supported Angela Moore on her 110. It was really well organised from a spectator's point of view. The information we were getting, never mind what the runners were getting, what we were getting was very good. It was the same thing. We knew which locations we could go to, which ones we couldn't, which we could go in, which we couldn't. And it makes a big difference, I think.
It does. It was really nice to have that and make things very clear. Because as I say, I wanted to make it easy for Val to support me, give her a good experience. And one of the things we were chatting about while we were running along, actually, with some of the other runners, was we haven't seen an event yet that does T-shirts for the supporters.
Wow.
Now, obviously, it would have to be somebody organising the race. It's got to be paid for one way or another, kind of thing. That's understandable. But that's something that we haven't seen. Obviously, on races that are ones where you invite that kind of support along the way. Because there's different kinds of races. There's plenty of races around that specifically are unsupported races, and you obviously wouldn't.
I think the race in summer it could work, but with a lot of races it's winter time and it's a bit difficult giving T-shirts to spectators in winter. They all want that, because it's like for the runners, you're literally you're running around keeping warm. But as a spectator, even on a summer day, you stood around, you're just getting cold and tired and really, really bored.
But that's what basically the reason I brought that up is just the fact to highlight how much the runners appreciate the supporters. And actually you get a mixed experience going through the towns and villages. There were so many people, and I have to say again, John's obviously done a great job over the years of building the reputation of the Hardmoors, because there was so many people that we ran past. I had no idea what particular event was, but they were just saying, oh, it's a Hardmoors race. Oh, these are Hardmoors people, and after, it's, well done to them for building that reputation.
Yeah.
But there are still plenty of people in the likes of Scarborough and Whitby when you're running through that are just getting in your way, almost tripping you up.
That could be any town in the UK, any town in the world, really.
Yeah, just completely kind of ignorant about the fact that people are doing events, and it's a little frustrating, and we were briefed about that. But that part of the briefing, I think people need to go along and experience, because it was well briefed about. But yeah, really, really good experience, and I'm growing in confidence, having being able to put into practice the things I've been learning along the way. So, looking forward to the next test, which is a little local race, which I'm doing 2 laps of this year, the White Rose Ultra.
I've heard it's quite a good race.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, it's
it's filling up nicely, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're very conscious, and we talked about this before we started doing the podcast, of not over promoting Team OA events, because it's about runners, not the events. It is, but I have to say, during the Hardmoors 60. Running along, the number of people that were talking about the White Rose,
it's got a cracking reputation.
It has. It's got a well-deserved reputation. I know there's a number of people don't like the road sections on it, but there's nothing hidden about that.
No. I actually think it's the hills that they don't like. It's not the roads.
Well, they say they don't like the road sections.
They overlook the road sections when they realise how hilly
it is a hilly one, and that's why it's a few miles shorter than the Hardmoors 60, but I actually see it as a slightly tougher race because it's hillier, although it doesn't have the steps. I'm not inviting you to put them in between now and the start of the race.
I can find some steps.
I know you're good at finding steps for other events.
John Steele actually ran the inaugural in the White Rose in the first year. He ran the 30 in the first year. We were talking about it a few weeks ago when I was over with him. Yeah, he still has fond memories of it. Yeah, but
it's a good event, the White Rose, and I'm looking
so you're doing the 60 this year?
Yeah.
I'll try and promise you some good weather. No, I'm trying to book hailstones this year and some horrificness.
It's warm and wet's the worst weather. Well,
warm.
Really, too hot. Hot is probably the worst. Warm and wet's the next worst, because you don't know whether to put a jacket on, not put a jacket on, and all the rest of it. But I'm kind of getting a bit more used to just. Actually, one of the bits of kit again that I mentioned to people is, for me, I found a long-sleeved sort of technical t-shirt that works really well, and I really like it because they're only $12.99. They're not one of these 50 quid ones. And it's the more miles or something they're called.
That's Up and Running's. Is it the Up and Running one or the one with the strange logo?
Strange logo. Yeah.
But I've gone now for just a tech tee with cyclist sleeves. The sleeves that you can just put on. They're absolutely genius. Because I can run along any time, I can just drop them off, and suddenly I'm in a t-shirt, and I get cold. I can just pull them back on.
As some people would say, it's a look, Wayne. It's a look.
It is, yeah. But I think, I can carry it off.
Really? Okay. Yeah.
From a distance, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
But just like the fact that I'm just wearing one top, I'm not having to worry about pulling out another top. And
like I say, I just kind of found this one that's breathable enough. It's got big zip down the front, and I probably can't pull off the look of getting my hairy chest out with the zip all the way down. But
I think maybe what we should do next time is actually have some of the kit here, so you can actually talk about show what you're actually talking about when I'm talking about. It's a bit
we can certainly do a podcast that does that. The other podcast that I'm looking at that I listened to, that I probably named slightly wrong last time, Runners on Trail, I think is the correct name of it. A couple of guys down south who are middle of the pack trail runners that do that one. They did a specific gear episode, which is particularly interesting to listen to as well. Talked about all their own gear. And it's when you listen to things like that, you find something, because they're very much into Solomon trail shoes, which I'm not. I don't particularly get on with the Solomon shoes.
I think for those people that they fit, they're absolutely
exactly
to none, but they don't fit me.
No,
yeah,
that's right. So it's well worth with gear. It is worth listening to different opinions and always bearing in mind that something that fits and suits someone might not fit and suit you, and it's worth narrowing down your choice by listening.
Yeah, I think it's great to do the thing on Facebook where you ask people's advice. What running shoes should I buy? But there's no easy way around it. You must go and try them shoes on yourself,
exactly.
and it's the same with packs, shirts,
jackets. It's just a shame that everything, I'm trying these Ultra shoes at the moment. So I kind of broke a rule of mine that I don't go and buy cheap shoes off the internet, just because they're on sale. But these are £120 shoes, and they were on offer 40% off.
Right.
And I thought, well, that means that I can, because I might go on a couple of runs with them and absolutely hate them. They're a radically different kind of running shoe. So I thought, well, actually, what I'll do is I'll buy these ones that are on special offer, try them out, because if I like them, I'm going to end up replacing like really aggressive fell shoes, trail shoes, and road shoes. So I've got plenty of scope of going and getting some really well-fitted ones from some shops supporting the local shops.
I know a couple of local shops would be very more than happy to have you support them.
Yeah.
Is it not more that you may be worth looking at having a second pair of the same shoes but in a bigger size for when you get to that half race stage and you can just go up a size during the race?
I'm already up so much in size because of the shape of the shoe that I'm tripping over the front of them. So yeah, I mean, I've my slightly 2 years ago when I didn't have a clue what I was doing, I was running in size 10s. I then quickly, having seen Cy Taylor at Mountain Feet, one of the local shops that I like to support, who's a real expert in footwear.
He's just a foot wizard.
He very quickly put me into size 11s, 11 and a halves. Those Scots that I was talking about, they're 12s.
Yeah.
So I'm already up 2 sizes.
Yeah. So your day-to-day walking, your day-to-day work shoes are a size 10, but when it comes to running,
they're 11s now.
So you've expanded your feet.
My day-to-day shoes are 11s. My running shoes are 12s that I'm doing long stuff in. But the shape of the shoes is still an issue. If I get any more than that, I'm going to have so much empty space at that pointy bit at the front where my feet don't point into that bit. So that's why looking at the Ultras. So I got the Ultras are a 12, and they're just so nice and roomy, but nicely designed that my foot isn't moving around in them.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. But it's early days. The zero drop on them really feels different on your ankles and your calves and your Achilles, because it's amazing how much you're just used to having a heel on your shoes.
Yeah.
When you go to having no heel on them, or the front and the back's the same thickness, it really does feel different. So I've run 20 odd K in them so far, 2 different runs, and I think they're going to work out, but I'm not quite there yet. But definitely it's a something when you get to that stage of learning enough about your feet, they're an option. Clark, who was shared his Western States story, it's what he runs in.
Yeah, is that where he did Western States?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and again, I've talked to Clark about them when I was stood next to him at a park run one day, and he was still wearing them because his feet weren't recovered enough to go onto other shoes. So yeah. But yeah, you do 100-mile races, whatever shoes you wear, your feet are going to be in a state.
It doesn't matter what you do, yeah. Something's got to give, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it's been good. And it's the running's really going well, which, considering the state I was in after that, I think the thing that's really hitting home for me now as well, and this is where listening to advice you've got to again be careful about, and I'm trying to be very careful with advice I give out, is that what I'm learning really is that as you train your body and you go up in the distances and you get used to training 6-7 times a week, the way your body reacts to things and what works for you changes. What works for me now I wouldn't necessarily recommend to somebody that's just doing 10k runs, and that's pushing themselves.
Yeah.
Because like if I go for 10, 12, in fact I did a 12.2k run up and down Wesleyan track from Mountain Rescue headquarters on Tuesday night by head torch on my own in the dark, and I didn't take a drink with me because I don't need it. I'm completely fine.
Yeah.
Now, somebody who is really pushing themselves to run 12k, I would not recommend going that distance without a drink. It's your body changes the way you adapt and react to the distance and the nutrition and everything else. I think something that maybe isn't talked about enough in running is that there are these intermediate steps. And again, looking at training plans, you've got to be very careful about training plans need to come with an introduction that this is a training plan for somebody who is already
at this stage.
Then
not
this
just,
training plan is going to work for you. If you're not at this stage already, you need to go and find more of a beginner training plan, which is going to be quite radically different. The basics will be the same. You do a few runs during the week where you're not overstressing your body, and you can mix in whether you're doing some hill work or some speed work, and on the weekend you want your back-to-back runs, or, your longer runs. That's the basics of most training.
It's the same for most distances, really. It's just the bits that you're running get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's adapting it to you, but you've got to build it around your lifestyle. And like one of the things I do is with work, sometimes I can't run as much as I want in a given week, and so I'll either do a big training, slightly overtrain the week before that, knowing that I've got that week to recover, or use that as a rest week and then train hard afterwards.
Right.
Because I know I've rested, and if I can time that for a rest after a race or a taper before a race, it can work really well. And it's just trying to constantly adapting things. But I've been training myself to run by how I feel and know if my body needs a rest. And again, sometimes think, okay, feel all right, but like for example, this weekend I want to do a couple of decent back-to-back runs. So although I feel fine today, do I want to run 8 days in a row and then do a couple of harder runs? I'll have a day off today. Even though I don't quite feel like I need it.
You've got to have a time. You've got to have some downtime from time to time.
Yeah.
You can't just keep pushing.
Yeah. But again, something else that wasn't clear to me, like when I was kind of starting out and starting to look at training plans, the training plan says it should be a rest day. I mean, for me, a rest day means walking.
Yeah,
8 to 10k.
It doesn't mean you necessarily stop, but you still you keep things moving. But
and sort of learning about active recovery,
pushing it, and
the difference between keeping your body ticking over with some exercise that isn't straining you versus